Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast sponsored by LinkedIn and titled Best Practices for Connecting with Prospective Students on LinkedIn. As part of our continuing efforts to be the most relevant force and voice shaping marketing around the world, the AMA offers a variety of resources, training, and tools to enhance lifelong learning and provide you with valuable information and connections. So at your convenience, please do go visit ama.org where you can click through the links to those resources, and you can also see a full list of our upcoming events that are taking place both in person and online. Before starting today's presentation, just a few quick housekeeping items to go over. We are recording the full presentation, and it will be made available to you very soon after, so look for that coming your way. If you can join us today on Twitter, we would appreciate your engagement at hashtag LinkedInEDU. So feel free to send out some tweets as the presentation goes on. And if you have questions for our speakers today, please use the chat feature that you see there to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area, and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. And content-related questions, we do encourage you to enter those as the presentation goes on. We will add those to our list of questions that we'll be addressing at the end of the formal presentation. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers joining us today, all from LinkedIn. We're being joined by Ira Emelhusen, who is the Senior Marketing Manager, Scott Jones, Account Manager, and Irina Skripnik, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager. And they all have a lot of great insights they're going to be sharing with you over the next hour. And so at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Ira, who's going to start today's presentation.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm really excited to be here today to bring you guys a nice mix of insights and best practices from LinkedIn. You know, I was at the AMA Symposium in Chicago last month, and one of the biggest things I took away from that event was that content marketing and social media was a really hot topic. And a lot of the attendees were really interested in ideas and best practices to help them improve their content marketing. So we look forward to bringing more of that info to all of you today. So thank you all for joining us. As Anthony mentioned, Scott Jones is also here. He'll be talking about some best practices for using sponsored updates on LinkedIn. And Irina will be covering sponsored in-mail, which is one of our most effective solutions for higher education marketing. So I will kick things off with some student journey research that we conducted. Let's go ahead and jump right into our research. As many of you know, it's become increasingly challenging to convert prospective students to enrolled students. 58% of admissions directors surveyed in a recent study by Inside Higher Ed said that they did not meet their enrollment goals. And this marks the third straight year that the majority of admissions directors reported this challenge. And we know it's all challenging to convert prospective students, but the value of the degree is still there. More than 63% of American jobs will require some sort of education or qualification beyond high school in just 3 years. So the question is, how do we help schools close this gap and connect prospective students with the opportunities that higher education provides? And how can you influence today's prospect, who is much more sophisticated and informed? About 10 years ago, I managed the marketing for a business school in California, and the audience has really changed since then. Today, prospects are empowered by unlimited access to information, and they're doing a lot of this decision-making research on their own and talking to their networks about which schools they should go to. So this is why we wanted to conduct our research, to really help marketers rethink the way they're engaging with prospects given today's digital landscape. So the goal of our research was to understand today's prospective students and the process that they go through when selecting a university or a higher ed course. Ultimately, our goal is to help marketers be more relevant and more impactful with content marketing. So to do that, we set out to answer a few questions about the prospect decision journey. We wanted to understand, how has social networks influenced their decision process? What motivates them to choose a particular school or course? And what types of content do they find most engaging during the decision process? So we all hear the buzz about content marketing, but how do you do it effectively? So to understand that, we surveyed more than 15,000 LinkedIn members across 14 countries and compared results for 2 specific groups down here on the left. MBA master intenders. Those are those who hold a bachelor's degree and plan to further their education. And then MBA master's grads. And that's those who currently hold an MBA or a master's degree, so about 500 of each of those groups. And today I'll share the US results from over 1,600 prospective students. But if you're interested in seeing the results from any of the other regions, reach out to us and we'll be sure to get that info to you. We're just starting to roll out those results now. One caveat on this research is that this research mainly speaks to the graduate level programs, but I will cover some data on the mindset of millennials, and that's particularly interesting to any undergraduate programs out there. And Scott and Irina will be sharing some best practices that are really relevant to any level of degree program. So whether you're an associate's or certificate program all the way up to a master's degree. So what were the key findings from our research? First, we found that the decision process is very exclusive, and making the short list of schools is really critical. The average short list is only 3 schools, and it's likely developed before the prospect even makes contact with the school. Second, peer groups and professional networks are a significant influence in the final decision. We found that friends and peers are the second biggest influence on education decisions, and professional social networks are 3 times more influential than personal social networks. Third, we found there's a big difference in mindset and motivations on pursuing a higher ed degree, and these are largely driven by age differences. So millennials have a different mindset than Gen X, and millennials are driven more by an increase in salary, while Gen Xers were more interested in pursuing a degree for their own personal growth. And then finally, we found that prospects are looking for specific content during each stage of their decision journey. And this content varies depending on which stage of the journey they're in. So being able to know what types of content motivates specific prospects and at what stage can provide a lot of insight into how you can tailor content to the right prospect at the right time. And we'll share some examples of this later on. So let's talk a little bit about the first finding and get a better understanding of the overall decision-making process that most prospects go through. Our research revealed that the decision-making process for graduate degrees is very exclusive. As I mentioned, on average, only 3 schools make it to the short list. And we also learned that 72% of prospects develop their short list before they even get in touch with a school representative. So in other words, prospects are very far along in their decision journey by the time they get in touch with you. We also learned that 93% of respondents end up enrolling at one of their shortlisted schools. So being able to influence and get on that shortlist is really critical. If you're not on that shortlist, it's really hard to get on there after they've made it. Marketers need to be well ahead in the process to start influencing prospects before they make their top choices. So because of, as we all know, this is a really long decision cycle, it's really important to focus on raising awareness early in the process for your program or university. And this is consistent with other research that we've seen. GMAC did a study that shows that prospective students begin to develop their shortlist 9 months before sitting for the GMAT exam. So the critical time period for you to engage is around 1 year or more before the application deadline. So really start thinking about getting in front of them early in the process. We also found that the higher ed decision process is a very social one. Friends, family, and peers were the second most influential source of information when considering further education, even more so than school resources like information sessions and enrollment counselors. This actually makes sense if you think about this big decision in your life, such as investing in your education. You're going to go to the people that you trust, like your friends and family and your trusted colleagues. But the challenge for marketers is now you not only need to influence the prospect, but you also need to influence their network. So their group of personal advisors, trusted advisors who are part of their inner circle. And the best way to do that is on professional networks. We also found that respondents put their trust into professional networks more so than personal networks to influence their decisions. Here we're talking about professional networks like LinkedIn versus personal social networks like Facebook and Twitter. We found that professional social networks are 3 times more influential. And this makes sense, especially when you consider that many prospects are now using social media to communicate with potential schools. And if you put yourself in the applicant's shoes, which social network profile would you want the admissions office to see? And this highlights how important it is for schools to have a presence on professional networks. So think about how you can influence a wider sphere of people that are influential in the decision by leveraging professional networks. So now let's talk about, oops, sorry, one second. I'm not sure if you're seeing the slides advance, but I'll go ahead and keep on going. Let's talk about what we learned about the mindset. Hold on one second, sorry. So let's talk about what we learned about the mindset and motivations of prospects. Why do they go back to school? Well, we learned that the #1 reason to go back to school is to achieve a higher salary. And that felt pretty obvious to us, but when you go beyond salary, you begin to see more of the intangible motivations for earning a degree, such as the need to up-level skills to be successful, a genuine passion for learning new things, and an increased confidence in their job. So it's important to keep some of these underlying motivations in mind when crafting your message to be even more relevant in your content marketing. So now let's talk about differences by age. We found that Millennials and GenXers have an interesting difference in their key drivers to undertake higher education. Millennials see the degree as a pathway to higher salary. And this is interesting because a lot of research has been done on millennials, and the prevailing thought is that when it comes to career decisions, millennials are more motivated by making a social impact versus a higher salary. But what we found was when it comes to making a decision about earning a graduate degree, the reality of increasing student loan debt in a tight job market comes to the forefront, and we saw that evidence in our survey. So salary is very important to them. But Gen Xers, on the other hand, were more settled, more confident in their career. They're more concerned with the passion for learning, self-fulfillment, and personal growth. So this becomes important, again, when crafting your messages to be more targeted to different audiences by generation. However, with all of this focus on higher salary and finances, it's interesting that prospects are not willing to compromise the learning experience for lower tuition. When it comes to deciding where to study, faculty and teacher quality is the top factor. And this is really important as it ensures their return on investment. Program format is #2, and university reputation is also important for many students, as they know the school's brand will impact awareness with employers. And then we finally see tuition and fees becoming an important factor. And this shows that even in the post-recession world, with all the talk about student debt and millennials moving back in with their parents after college, they're still willing to pay a premium for a quality experience. Interestingly, university rankings are 7th on the list of most important factors. So I think that's good news for schools that may not be as high on the rankings as others. And the reality is rankings can only get you so far. You know, the quality of the learning experience is the key driver here. We also found that flexible study options are essential for today's students. We heard that today's prospects are concerned about the cost of getting a degree, but we also heard that online learning options are creating increased competition for more traditional degrees, partly due to the cost and investment required. So our research showed that MBA and master's intenders want flexibility. They want to be able to pursue advanced degrees that fit into their lifestyle. And this is especially true for those over the age of 35. They're 58% more likely to seek online learning and 39% more likely to look for hybrid learning, which is a combination of online and face-to-face. Millennials, on the other hand, are 21% more likely to want part-time local study options. So again, this is important to keep in mind when developing your content and targeting strategies. The final key insight from our research was related to what types of content are most influential at various stages of the decision process. And this is one of my favorite slides. Sorry, I'm not seeing it advance. I don't know, Anthony, if you can advance it for me. The final key from our, this is one of our slides, my favorite slides, because it can help you think about the different types of content that you need in your content calendar. We found that content changes depending on where the prospect is on the decision journey. Hopefully you can see the slide. I'm not seeing it advance, but take a look at it when we send it to you. This is a great way to map your content by the decision journey to target the right information to the right person at the right time. There we go. And that's the age-old rule of marketing, right? You know, hitting the right person at the right time. Sorry, back one more slide. So this chart can show you how you can potentially tailor your content during the 3 stages of the journey to be most relevant. At the beginning, you see that MBA and master's intenders want to see institution rankings, education, industry news, and career advice at the awareness stage. And then as they move further along in the discovery phase, they're looking for education and industry news, career advice, where they're more involved in conducting their own research. It's interesting to note, and Anthony, I don't know if you can go back one slide. Info on courses and programs is sought after throughout all stages. There we go. Sorry, having a little technical difficulties. Info on courses and programs is really sought after throughout all the 3 stages. So that's really table stakes for any school to have. And it's important to be able to make sure that it's accessible from all your marketing communications. And then as we get closer to the selection phase, staff and lecturer profiles give prospects an idea of the culture and the quality of the learning experience. And then at the final stage, expert commentary and reviews, alumni profiles and achievements really help prospects reinforce and give them confidence that they made the right decision. So moving on to the next slide. Here are just some examples of schools that are providing the right types of content at each decision phase. Here in the awareness stage, we see a sponsored update from Harvard Business School giving career advice. And then in the discovery phase, Syracuse Online giving some program information with a strong call to action with the GMAT waiver. And then moving it down to the selection phase, University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, featuring some of their alumni profiles. So these are just examples of some of the different types of content that you can share mapped to the decision journey. And these can be either shared with organic posts from your university page or with paid media like sponsored updates and email. And Scott and Irina will dive deeper into that later. So in summary, we found that prospects rely heavily on their peers, family, and friends' experiences and use professional networks in their decision making. And making that shortlist is really critical. So you need to engage early in the decision process to really get in front of them and make that shortlist. You know, understanding what motivates prospects and their mindset during the decision journey will really help you engage at the right time with the right messages. And we shared some content related to each of the 3 critical stages of the journey. I think that the real thing that you want to take away from this is that you need to get in front of your audience early with content marketing. And the best way to do that is to give targeted messages by each stage of the journey. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Scott, who will talk to you about some best practices for sponsored updates and how you can be more relevant with that.
Great. Thanks, Ira. Like Ira said, now let's switch gears a bit and focus on sponsored updates, divided into 3 different sections. First, we're just going to look at the new role of content, specifically how that plays out on LinkedIn. So content has a more important role now more than ever before. According to a recent study by Pardot, nearly 50% of B2B buyers start their solution research with a web search, and 72% of those buyers will use Google at some point in the research process. After all of these searches, it's vital to stay top of mind with prospects through their entire journey through the entire marketing funnel, everywhere they go. And that's where this other study, where consumers use an average of 10.4 sources of information to research a purchase decision, comes into play. Although EDU isn't exactly the same as a B2B buying cycle, it's very similar and has a lot of similarities in that it's a longer path to conversion, and oftentimes it's pretty complex. Next slide here. So as we're seeing that content marketing is becoming more and more of an important part of advertisers' overall marketing plans and marketing objectives, specifically within EDU, I wanted to take a look at what some other players are doing. So some of these logos on screen, these are just some examples of the top content marketing scores on LinkedIn globally this year in Q2. And what a content marketing score is it quantifies and benchmarks the influence companies and even universities have on LinkedIn and they're stacked against a competitive set. These 9 or 10 companies have the highest content marketing scores on LinkedIn, and the reason being is because 70% of all top 10 use all of LinkedIn's sharing tools. Some of those including sponsored updates, employee sharing, and the publishing platform, which is continuing to evolve as we speak. They share often. Top companies share up to 10 times per day. Now we realize that always isn't realistic for every single advertiser, but you get the gist that they're investing more effort and more time into their content marketing strategy in order to drive more results. And then they know their audience. They're using some of the tools, which I'll go over shortly, that their account teams are able to provide them to better arm themselves, knowing what their audience wants to hear, and then tailoring their content specifically to those topics. Content, especially on LinkedIn, is now more accessible now more than ever, with mobile and tablet use on the rise. Here we can see that we're urging advertisers to think beyond the typical 9-to-5 schedule, as professionals are investing more time consuming this content at home. You can see in a recent study by LinkedIn, up to 76% of these users are actually on LinkedIn and engaging on the platform, on their mobile devices, on their tablets, while they're at home, maybe watching TV, cooking dinner. They're not always in the work environment anymore. While 47% are still consuming and actively engaging on LinkedIn during work, we can see that not only at home, but more users are consuming this information when they're traveling to work, when they're at school, when they're on their daily commute. So similar to that 10.4 pieces of content statistic that we saw in the beginning, it's really, really important to stay at top of mind wherever your user goes and wherever these prospects go. And by using sponsored updates on LinkedIn, you're able to achieve that. This chart was also a recent study that was done by LinkedIn. And similar to the recent slide, it just shows you how mobile, tablet, and desktop compare throughout the day. And you can see that tablet use actually skyrockets after 5 p.m. when users are at home. So again, think mobile and tablet first when you're planning your content strategy. Next, we're going to look at EDU and how it is on LinkedIn. This is a quick snapshot of LinkedIn content by the numbers. So as of today, we're up to over 400 million professionals worldwide, 7 different ways to share content. And again, some of those are sponsored updates, our SlideShare, Pulse, our publishing platform, employee sharing, organically posting on the company page. So there are several ways to post on LinkedIn to get your messaging out there. Two of the interesting stats here that I want to draw attention to are 7 times content versus jobs. This is a recent statistic, meaning that there are 7 times more pieces of content than there are jobs on LinkedIn. So users are coming to LinkedIn not only for a recruiting tool and to look for new jobs, but to build their professional network and find relevant information to them that can help expand and grow not only their professional selves, but their personal selves as well. And then 50% mobile, and this is upwards of 70% for sponsored updates. And what this means is, one of the latest studies as of last quarter, we're actually seeing more and more engagement from mobile for sponsored updates. So one of the key takeaways from this presentation is that when you're tailoring and you're developing and you're working through some of your content strategy, to always keep mobile at the forefront of that strategy and make sure all of your ads are mobile optimized, which we'll get into in a little bit. 3 things to start doing differently now when you're thinking about your content strategy on LinkedIn. Number 1, what value does your ad provide to the consumer? When I always ask clients this, I always challenge them to think of a few different questions. Some of these questions are, what makes this program better or different from the rest? Will this help grow or expand the member's career or experience? Do you have any student success stories or faculty testimonies that you're able to share? What about the average job placement rate? We're seeing great engagement when you advertise that this is a top field within the country or a top profession within the country. Users are only going to engage, and they want relevant information on how they can grow their career and how this is going to benefit them now and in the long run. Also highlighting things like the average salary when you get a job in this field or from this program. So asking yourself all of these questions really helps you get in the mindset of the audience first and the member first policy, which tends to drive great engagement and performance on LinkedIn. Provide useful information before asking for contact information. So thinking about these questions, tying back these questions by offering helpful articles, helpful blogs, videos, infographics, embedded images. There's several different ways that we can get this information out that will be eye-catching to your target audience and these prospects that will help engage with your ad. Then tell stories and use you information. So always tie everything back to the member and speak directly to them. That's where we see the most success when we're looking at sponsored updates. So how to differentiate rule number 1. Tying back to the content marketing score and what some of those top advertisers are doing, they know their audience. They know what their followers want to hear and what their prospects are interested in. This is a chart that was pulled by an account team here at LinkedIn based on LinkedIn data. And it just it gives you an example of a specific university and what these prospects or what these members are interested in hearing or what they want to hear. And they all tie back to feeling a sense within the community or feeling a part of the school. So you can see some of these are, as a student and alumni, I'm interested in the school. So they're interested in the overall school. They want to stay up to date on the latest news from the school. They want to be included in the school's community on LinkedIn. And then followed by they want to stay informed on the industry. So overall, they want to be more in the know, they want to be more informed, and they want to always carry that feeling like they're a part of the university or the school, or even the program. Now, earlier on in the presentation, I mentioned the trending topics report, which also gives some of our advertisers and some of our partners a better understanding of what their target audience is looking to hear and read on LinkedIn. For this specific example, I took two different very different target audiences to see what they're interested in looking at. So current non-MBA postgrad students, we can see that they're most concerned with personal finance. Now this makes a lot of sense with current non-MBA postgrad students because these are likely students who are in the market for their MBA. They're trying to figure out where they want to school, what they want to go to school for, what program makes most sense for them. And on top of that, with the student loan debt increasing, they're really concerned about personal finance and how they're actually going to be able to make their goals become a reality. So they want to hear about personal finance. So how can your program, how can your university, how can your school help or guide them into the right resources to make sure that they can plan right for their future. Now secondly, moving over to the current MBA postgrad students, so these could be students who are in the job market. They have a year left of school, they might be graduating soon. They're interested in recruiting. They want to know what's out there. They're thinking about where their next job's going to be, what their next play is going to be, and what their degree can actually get them. So tailoring content to this audience more on the job placement or the average salary, or is this a top career in the country right now. All of those would be really helpful topics to engage with these non-followers and get them to become followers on your LinkedIn company page. Now zoning in a little bit and just looking at some examples specific to EDU. So we can see at the top here the Simply Learn sponsored updates image. This is a best practice and it was performed really well because they're highlighting an infographic. So that infographic really helps this post to stand out amongst the LinkedIn newsfeed. Moving things over to Kaplan University's ad. This one has a testimony from a faculty member. So it's a trusted member, it's a trusted person from that university. Members are much more likely to engage with this piece of content. The following one below that is speaking specifically to accountants or people who are interested in accounting. So we saw a great performance here as well because you're speaking directly to that user. You're giving them a reason to click on the ad and relevance to what they're looking to get out of LinkedIn and content. And then the last one here is don't start your job search without this simple guide. So it's offering tips from an expert. Users are going to be more likely to click this ad because it's actually benefiting them and what they want to hear. This next slide is just taking a look at the marketing funnel and the different ways you can get this information to your target audience or to your followers using sponsored updates. So thinking more awareness, top of the funnel, promoting things like infographics and blog posts and trends. And then as we move down to the funnel, we're going to want to start getting newsletters and recommendations and case studies to really drive those leads and drive those conversions. And again, here's an example of EDU through the funnel. So the top funnel is more upper funnel brand messaging, and all of these pieces of ads have one key thing in common, and they're giving more non-gated articles. They're giving best practices and tips and tricks and helpful articles, while the bottom two pieces of content are more bottom funnel lead focused, direct messaging with strong call to actions, prompting the users and the prospects to take action now. So inevitably, they convert and take interest in the ad. And then getting into some best practices. So a motto that I always go by, and something that our tool here at LinkedIn really makes it easy to do, is always test, optimize, repeat. Test, optimize, repeat as much as you possibly can, and you're inevitably going to see great success and strong results. Now, when you're creating content and you're in that brainstorming mindset, I always try to urge our partners and our clients to try writing from 3 different perspectives. And these are the helpful advisor, the conversationalist, and the cliffhanger. The helpful advisor, it starts by explaining how your piece of content will help your target achieve professional success. So like I said before, users on LinkedIn really want to drive their career. Give them help, be helpful, and be that advisor, be that trusted advisor. Make a bold statement or ask a question to spark the conversation. After all, LinkedIn is a social media platform, so drive conversations. Then tell your audience just enough to pique their interest, but not so much that they aren't compelled to learn more. So this is a standard marketing persona that I urge my clients to follow. But just give them enough information so they click on the ad and they want to learn more. Some best practices here. So use images to drive engagement. You've seen several examples of these now where our advertisers are using large infographics to really drive members' engagement and drive their interest. These types of ads really help the ads to stand out in the news feed. Use bright images, use clear images, and emphasize the call to action on these images. And then again, with the test, optimize, and repeat, here's some examples of how, by testing, how these examples saw greater success. So think simple. Always consider testing personalization or variations of your call to action. And here we just simplified the call to action here by targeting entrepreneurs and speaking directly to their target audience, and they saw a huge CTR lift as a result of this change, this very minor change. Keep it positive and inspirational. So again, users are coming to LinkedIn to expand their career, enhance their skills, grow on a skill set, or learn more. So as they're doing that, keep it positive and inspirational. Here, they're just turning around the introduction text. So does a potential employer think you're overqualified for the job? Address the issue head on during your next interview and give them some non-gated content to learn how they can address that issue head on. Always include a strong call to action in any direct response messaging, especially with sponsored updates. We also see great success and great engagement when you start any introduction text or any sponsored update out with a question. So in this example, it starts with prone to procrastination, take back your day with these simple tips. So it's starting with a question, it's prompting that conversation, and then it's also offering some helpful advice. Again with mobile, so always make sure you optimize your content for mobile. For best mobile performance, make sure your intro text, so that is the first part of your sponsored update, is always fewer than 150 characters, or you can also try to eliminate it altogether, but never go over that 150 character mark. Make sure your call to action is clear and concise. Make sure the user knows exactly what you're trying to get them to do. And then also, probably most importantly, I would say, make sure your landing page is optimized for the small screen, specifically how we're getting such high engagement levels from mobile devices. And then last but not least, have fun. So again, LinkedIn is a social media platform. Although we are a more professional context, you can stand out by having entertaining and fun updates and speaking directly to those audiences and starting a conversation. So don't be afraid to play around with words a little bit. And then lastly, again, with the landing pages, once the member clicks on your update, delight them with an experience on your website that will convert. Meaning that always make sure your landing pages offer the same type of content and the same type of look and feel that the ad does, so the user isn't confused when they get to the landing page. Like we said, 70% of clicks from sponsored updates will come from mobile, so make sure your landing pages are optimized for mobile. Then most importantly, keep your form fills short. So best practice is keeping your forms to a 3 to 5 limit, just asking for common information like name, email, phone, something that's easy for the member to fill out and won't take a lot of time. Then by far the biggest best practice recommendation when planning a campaign strategy and your overall content planning. So thinking about all these different types of ad variations, whether or not it's awareness building, lead gen, somewhere in the middle, you have non-gated content, you have videos, you have infographics, you have blog posts. There's a lot of different ways that you can reach your target audience and your followers on LinkedIn. How do you keep all this organized? This is how I always urge and recommend my clients to stay organized is by creating a content calendar or a content planner. And this is just an example that I mocked up of a DR advertiser. And as Ira mentioned on, as how I mentioned on earlier in the presentation, even for DR-focused clients and DR-focused objectives, it's still very important to have an always-on awareness strategy. So keep that up top. Then here you can see this is more of our DR always-on lead generation plan, and then followed by some events that you might want to highlight or plan. And this is something that an account rep at LinkedIn can help you plan. But ultimately, the key takeaway here is keep lead generation a top priority while still focusing on awareness and thought leadership. Become known to new members and keep engaging post-lead. Creating a content calendar will help achieve those. And the very, very last thing, I see a lot of advertisers, they have a lot of many Pebbles. So they have a lot of different content, blog posts, articles, images. They only have one, but you can create multiple variations of the same type of blog post or article and create out of one big route, create many Pebbles. So this is something I always try to urge my clients to do, and a lot of them have found success by doing so. And that wraps up some of the sponsored updates, best practices, and tips and tricks on LinkedIn. I'm going to turn things over to Arena now to go through email.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Scott. When it comes to context, value, and mindset, this is something that I kind of speak to over and over again. And when those three align, something magical really happens. And sponsored email is a very unique product, and I've worked on this product for the last 2 years, kind of relaunching it from the legacy version to the brand new version of the sponsored email product, and analyzing hundreds and thousands of examples of sponsored emails that are sent all across different verticals. And I would say the higher education marketer is really helping something special happening here, and it's also one of the most highest performing verticals when it comes to sponsored email, and that's simply because the value is truly there. Our members are on LinkedIn to be more productive, to be more successful, and the sponsored email product is incredibly unique in a way where you can send a long-form content message and really get the mind share and the voice that you have and carry it across to the members. So when it comes to the messenger and the members' inbox, in the last month or so, we completely transformed the inbox from kind of the one-off messages to a more chat-like experience. The more genuine conversations can happen, and the conversations are not being taken off of LinkedIn. We've changed the interface to have threaded messages, to have a chat-style interface with more fun icons and attachments. And it's really a people-centric view now, whereas in the past it was kind of a laundry list of all the messages that you have. So when it comes to sponsored email, this is where you should really start planning and thinking of your content in the messaging landscape. This is where your content with the 1 in 60-day rule, so a member can only receive a sponsored email every 60 days, your voice and your mind share really does take quite a bit of real estate here. And with being able to have your personalized greeting and the message, as well as a custom call to action to take your prospective students to a landing page, instead of having lengthy and very kind of dry content, this is an opportunity to really have fun with this in the messaging experience. This is where the genuine conversations are happening, connections, career opportunities, introductions. So this is where you have an opportunity to have this message and to get it in the inbox. And it really is, sponsored email is really the only way that marketers can engage with prospective students in the inbox. Now, when it comes to reach, so sponsored email doesn't stop at desktop. Now you can reach prospective students across desktop, mobile app, and mobile web as well. So between sponsored email and sponsored updates, those are our two main products where you can reach your audience both on desktop and on mobile as well. So let's talk a little bit about how to really take your sponsored emails from great to outstanding. And in general, as I view and I look through education-specific examples, they're generally very good. You have very specific purpose for your message. Your benefit is clear, and most of the time it does have the member benefit at the forefront. But kind of let's get into top 10 tips, and I've worked with our business analytics team to really come up with these and understand where the trends are. So I've come up with 10 simple tips, and the slides will be available for you after the webinar as well, so you can use these and you can save these for when you're actually crafting your content. But the first one really is the impact of your message starts with the preview, and really that's where whether you're in your inbox on mobile, whether you're in your inbox on desktop, it's really that subject line and who the message is from that really makes a difference. You have an option as a marketer to send the message from either a person, so you have the member's picture and then their name. So here you see it from Diane, or it can come from a school. So you can upload the logo as well as your school's name. So the difference here, and the recommendation that I make is if your message is highly personalized, and if Diane, for example, is saying, I found your profile, your experience looks fantastic, I think that you would make a great candidate. If it comes from kind of the first person, it really does make sense for it to be sent from a person. But if your message really talks about the school and the program and the campus and the words that are being used are we or as a school, this is where it really makes a lot more sense for there to be the company logo and for there to be the school name as well. And then when it comes to subject line, because you now have this messaging experience, I would craft the subject line to be personable and get the member's attention without being over the top or kind of demanding or marketing-y. Make it a little more flowy. When it comes to description, that really is an optional field, but it's there to support your subject line. So it kind of gives additional context to what the member should do once they get to the actual message. Now, when it comes to subject lines, when we analyzed all the different top-performing campaigns as well as lower-performing campaigns, the subject lines that perform best and the keywords that are part of that subject line, and this is kind of a no-brainer, but it really is when the member's benefit is at the front of the subject line. So invitation, business, opportunity, job, management, MBA, exclusive. So a lot of these are 100% aligned with education campaigns. And again, when the analysis was done, it was all the campaigns globally across all different verticals. So it really is a testament to how powerful education vertical plus sponsored email can be. So I encourage you to use some of these keywords when crafting your subject lines. Now when it comes to targeting, you have a plethora of amazing targeting opportunities to be able to really narrow in on your target audience. You can target by specific title, by specific function, seniority. So there's all different types of targeting that you can do with sponsored email. And here with sponsored email is where you really narrow in on your audience, and you have an opportunity to tailor your content to that audience as well. So I found this fantastic example from the University of Iowa where the program is specific for project managers, and they're targeting project managers, and it just simply makes sense to call this out. For this particular target audience, they'll see that in the subject line, in the headline, as well as the first paragraph, and it just makes sense. It's relevant to them, and they can see that it's relevant. And this is also a really good example where Dawn, the message comes from a first person, and she's introducing herself in the first sentence as well as what she does for the university as well. So this is just a fantastic example of personalization and then taking it a step further and making it relevant for the specific target audience. One thing I would say is be careful and not to go overboard. We do have rich targeting capabilities, but if you get too in-depth and too specific, it may just appear creepy at some point, especially with a message. So I would just keep it very high level, but relevant at the same time. When it comes to seniority targeting on LinkedIn, kind of demystifying the entry and the senior, those are all the positions where they don't have manager, director, VP, or C-level in their title. These are engineers and senior engineers, developers, doctors, nurses. These are people who have very specific job and specific specialization without having a specific manager or director in their title. So this is also the biggest audience pool on LinkedIn, and these are probably going to be your the biggest pool of your prospective students. So unless you have a very specific executive education campaign or something that's tailored more to the director and above audience, I do encourage you to try out and test with entry and senior as well. When it comes to the body of the message, we covered kind of the subject line and the description of what appears in the preview. When it comes to the actual message, and most messages that I see actually do a fantastic job when it comes to education, but that's giving your message a unique voice so that even though a prospective student can only receive one sponsored email every 60 days, you want to make sure that there's a really personal and genuine sense of touch when you're crafting the message. When it comes to the banner, I wouldn't overthink it, with all honesty. Most of the call to action, I would say 95% of all the calls to action happen on the body link as well as the call to action button at the bottom. I would say anywhere from maybe under 5% is the clicks that actually happen to the banner. The banner is there for the branding and for the overall enhancement of the visual of the message. So really focus on crafting the content, keeping it very concise, simply because if it takes a minute or more to read your message, it really is a lot of time investment. And having a clear call to action that's strong, and that my kind of suggestion for the call to action is use the last sentence to give the member a sneak peek at what happens on the actual landing page. So when you click this button, this is what you should be expecting. And the same thing with the body link. I've seen messages that do not have that body link, and here courses is hyperlinked, for example. The performance is much lower. The click-through rate is not nearly as strong as when you have both a contextual hyperlink as well as a call to action button. So I highly encourage kind of making your copy flow, introducing either the school or the person that's reaching out in the first sentence, giving some information about the actual course and how the member will benefit from it, and then closing out the message with what to expect on the landing page. And some of the kind of tips for the different versions of Sponsor Mail that you can have is kind of the helpful advisor and helping explain how the program, how the particular audience will achieve success with this program. Invitations work fantastic. Open houses, webinar presentations, any kind of online events. Sponsor Mail is fantastic for events. And then kind of your traditional relevant program, Sponsor Mail, similar to the one that I showed you from the University of Iowa. And for calls to action, keep them very simple and very short. Anything that's longer will simply get cut off on mobile. It won't look great. So things like try and register reserve, some of the typical calls to action. I generally would say avoid using something like learn more unless there really is something to learn on the landing page. Having something that's more actionable of a call to action, such as download or reserve, especially a call to action that's timely if you have a specific deadline registration, making it sound very exclusive or that there's a certain urgency. Those sponsor mails do tend to perform better. And when it comes to taking advantage of lead opportunities, and Scott covered this in the sponsored updates portion as well, just wanted to reemphasize the importance of making sure that you're taking advantage of reaching your prospects and engaging them wherever they may be. So if you have a sponsored updates campaign running, you're really engaging your audience on desktop, mobile, in the feed. adding sponsored email into your program will help engage them when they're in their inbox, checking their messages and browsing their messages as well. So kind of the final point that I have regarding optimizing in content is mobile. So on our end, sponsored email is built out by your campaign team. So our ad ops team will build out the message for you. And we ensure that the sponsored email is mobile optimized when it comes to the actual message. It'll appear clear, the calls to action work. So we do all the testing on our end. But on your end, what's really important is to make sure that the landing page that you're using is mobile friendly. And it doesn't have to be built specifically for a mobile device. But it shouldn't create a negative experience. So this was a fantastic example that I have here from FIU, and their landing page is just incredibly seamless. They have a chat opportunity. There's plenty of information around what the coursework is, and it's a really easy to navigate page, and it is just a web page that's been optimized for mobile. So overall, a fantastic experience, and I encourage you to make sure that when you are receiving your test and when you're testing your sponsored email, to check across all devices to make sure it's a seamless experience as well. And when you're planning your campaign and when you're planning your overall budget, the reason why we kind of speak about multi-product approach and the different stages of the funnel is because you have an opportunity to share different types of content in different stages and engage the prospective students in very different ways. Some students may be more receptive to fun, engaging content like videos and infographics, while others are kind of straight to the point. I need the information or the program details or the invitation for an in-person event. So it's really an opportunity to optimize to A/B test and to be able to have diversity in your portfolio of campaigns. I do have a few minutes, and I have 3 examples that I wanted to show you that you'll have as part of the slides as well. But it's really around being human and being personal. You'll have these slides, you'll be able to read through these examples as well. But Georgetown did a fantastic job just keeping it very real and really personal. Being relevant, so the Harvard Business School coursework and the way they position it here is very clear bullet points and straight to the point of what the program is for the specific target audience. And then being timely, register now, really timely call to action for a specific event. So 3 fantastic examples. At this point, I will conclude my portion of best practices for sponsored email and pass it on to Ira.
Great. Thank you so much, Irina and Scott. These are great best practices. I hope you guys take some time after this webinar to dive into the deck that will be sent out to you, because there's really a lot of information here that you can use as you start to plan and implement your strategies. So let's go ahead and jump into a quick 5-minute Q&A. I see some questions come in, but if you haven't put them in yet, you can type them into the chat box on the left. So the first question I think can be directed to Scott. What is the right mix between bottom of the funnel lead gen content versus top of the funnel brand awareness content?
Yep. So ideally, we would like to see, I would say 90% of brand awareness and top of the funnel, whereas 10% for DR and lead gen strategies and objectives. Now, however, a 1 ratio isn't really universal for all clients and all their marketing objectives. So even 50% would do, but I think the key takeaway is just always making sure, even though you do have a DR objective or DR goals, to make sure you're providing and including that thought leadership piece as well. You want to give users information before you can get information. It's kind of always like you never ask someone to marry. You never ask someone to marry you on the first date. You need to get some more information before coming to that conclusion. It's the same thing with sponsor updates.
Great. Good personal advice and marketing advice. And that's really the goal of content marketing, right? Be helpful before you start to ask for the sale or the enrollment. So definitely make sure that you're getting a good mix of that top of the funnel helpful content and then your ask to attend an information session or download a view book. Great. So second question, I think for Irina, what is the process for developing email creative? It looks like an email type of product. Can you repurpose email creative, and how does that process work? Ira,
really great question. So absolutely, and that's I'm really happy that this question came up and the point. And you really can repurpose both your email content as well as some of the content you're using for sponsored updates as well. It's just about crafting the message and making it very personal. So most of the time when it comes to email, it tends to be very image heavy. So if you are crafting that and repurposing the content, just making sure that you're crafting it for the messenger experience and that you're adding that sense of relevancy and personalization. When it comes to the process of submitting content, so when you're planning your sponsored email campaign, you'll be working with an account manager and most likely a campaign manager as well. We have a submission form that guides you through the process where you enter in your subject line and what you'd like to use as the logo as well as the text that you'd like to use. So that's where you can plug in the text that you're repurposing. And what happens next is our team will build the actual sponsored email campaign for you and send you a test to your LinkedIn inbox. You can then test and see what the message looks like on your desktop, on mobile, provide feedback to your campaign manager and account manager about the changes that you want to make. So you're almost acting like a member receiving this message, and you're able to craft and optimize the message based on how it looks in the inbox. So if there's something that's off, we can go ahead and fix that for you. And then once the test is complete, we then go ahead and deploy the message for you based on the target audience that you've pre-selected. So overall, I would say it's a pretty seamless and straightforward submission process, and your account team will always be there for you to help and support you through the process.
Great. Thanks, Irina. Here's a question that I think I can answer on the research that we presented. How do we identify which stage of the journey our customer is in so that we can time it with the right content? That's a great question. I think that's almost been like the holy grail for marketers for a long time. How do you reach the right person at the right time? LinkedIn has a new product that we unveiled this year called LinkedIn Lead Accelerator. And it is more for a sophisticated marketer that has kind of a content calendar mapped out. But what it enables you to do is to deliver sequenced messages to people that visited your website and maybe didn't leave their information. So you can follow them on different websites and sequence different display messages according to who they are and where they are in the decision process. So LinkedIn Lead Accelerator can definitely help you do that. Also, a lot of higher education marketers are using their own databases to do lead scoring. So you can tell if someone has downloaded a viewbook or attended an information session, and obviously they're further down the cycle. So you can continue to market to them with different content as they visit your site or as you send them emails or in-mails. So I encourage you to use both LinkedIn products and also your own databases to reach the right person. Let's see here. We have an interesting question here, and I can start the answer, and Scott and Irina, feel free to jump in. How many updates should an individual as opposed to an organization be pushing out each week in order to stay top of mind and avoid overwhelming personal connections? I think that's interesting because LinkedIn is quickly becoming a great platform for building your own influence, and you're becoming an influencer yourself. I really don't think it's a matter of how many. I think you want to be frequent enough that people are going to see you at least 2 or 3 times a week, but it's really about the quality that you're promoting. So you want to make sure that what you're putting out there, what you're posting is relevant to your audience first, and then make sure you're doing it at least 2 or 3 times a week to be top of mind. Do you guys have any tips of what you've seen as far as a personal posting on LinkedIn? Scott or Irina?
I'm trying to think. Personal posting, I mean, even like just switching it a little bit, I've seen a lot of success with email using more personalization. I think with sponsored updates, it's even more effective if you're able to personalize it directly to that target audience. And you don't necessarily need to direct it to a specific person per se, since you're reaching at large scale. But just using simple things like you and I, just personalizing the message overall, I think that tends to produce really strong results.
Great. All right, I see we are over time, so there's a lot of great information. Again, I encourage you to look out for the PowerPoint deck, which will be sent to you today, and dive into a lot of the great best practices. Thank you again to Scott, Irina, and Alex for all the great information. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Anthony to close this out.
Great. Thank you so much, Ira. And as you said, Irina and Scott, thank you all so much. It's been a great hour of information. As we go ahead and conclude our webcast, as Ira mentioned, there will be some follow-up emails coming your way, so everyone please look for those coming very shortly. To those of you that were engaged on our Twitter hashtag today, there was a great presence there, so thank you all so much for that. If you weren't able to be a part of that during the presentation, you can go post-webcast, still engage at hashtag LinkedIn.edu. And here in just a moment, we're going to redirect you to our survey page. And if you would take a moment or two, let us know what you thought of today's presentation. Also, let us know what topics you would like to see the AMA present to you on future webcasts. We really appreciate your input on that as we try to make sure that we're targeting you with the insights that you are looking for. So thanks in advance for helping us with that. In closing, I want to extend a big thank you to LinkedIn for sponsoring our webcast today, as well as to ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we used. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. Last, of course, I want to thank all of you in our audience today for sharing an hour from your busy day with us. We certainly hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon on another AMA Thought Leader webcast. That does end our presentation for today. Thanks again for joining, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.